Good afternoon and welcome. Hello there. Welcome to all teachers connected from different parts of the world. Actually, it's always nice to know where you are based. If you like to write down where you are based, it's very interesting for us to know. So for those of you who do not know me, I'm Silvia. I'm the marketing manager here at Ali Publishing, and thanks to join us today to our third live session organized by Ali Publishing. And this is like a weekly appointment we have scheduled, so there will be another one next week. And I'm here today. I just want to reassure you, I'm not a speaker, of course. I would just like to share with you just a few technical details regarding this platform and this live session. The session will consist of about 45 minutes of workshop, thanks to our dear speaker, Vanessa, as you can already see her. And then there will be about 10-15 minutes dedicated to questions and then answers. So your questions and answers from Vanessa. Feel free to write down any comments, any thoughts, any questions you might have during the session and at the end of the session. Seize the moment. Seize the moment to ask Vanessa for any tips, anything, okay? Don't be shy, because I know sometimes you just prefer to write down comments, but I think it's a good opportunity for you to take advantage of this moment, okay? So just monitor your toolbar. There should be questions or chat box for you to type down your comments. Be aware that you won't be able to see the other participants' comments or questions, but I and Vanessa will be able to see them, to read them and monitor, okay? So you might feel you are alone, but you are not, okay? There are so many of you connected at the same time, but the platform just doesn't allow to see each other, okay? Then, another important thing is that this is a live event, but there will be a recorded video. So we will be recording this video, this session, and it will be available in the next few weeks through our Facebook page. So just make sure to follow Ali Publishing Facebook page in the next few weeks for yourself, for your friends. You might like to share the video, etc. Also, I know you are looking for this. The certificate of attendance will be released tomorrow afternoon. It will be an e-certificate, so in a PDF format. It will be directly sent to your inbox. Okay, check the spam, because sometimes it just go there. And last but not least, kindly our author, our speaker, has put together a handout for you. So it's something for your archive, your study, to keep record of this beautiful session that it will be. Just remember to download this handout before the end of this session. And again, going through your toolbar, there's a heading saying handouts. Just press on it, open it, and download the PDF. If you are connected through a smartphone, there should be an icon, like a sheet icon. So click on it and download it. I think that's all by me. I don't want to waste too much of your time. I'm very, very pleased. I'm very happy to have today Vanessa Reis. So she's directly from Porto. She's based in Porto, where she's actually currently teaching at a Escuela Superior. So she teaches English language, literature, and various subjects related to the methodology and didactic of teaching English. She actually has been passionate about the teaching world of English as a second language, as a foreign language, for the past 20 years and more. We don't specify how many, but she's got such a wide experience. She's also a writer of coursebook and a trainer, of course, as you can see from today. And she's currently completing her doctorate degree in the field of coursebook design. What else? Can we add something else? I don't think. You're doing so many things at the same time, and they're all really good and beautiful. So I'm very happy now to give you the floor, Vanessa, with this beautiful webinar, Unlocking the Magic of Learning. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. So let me just say a hello to all of you around the world. And I am going to ask you if you could please type in the question box where you are listening from and if you can hear me loud and clear. Webinars are fantastic things, but we always worry about being alone and not being heard. So if you could make my life just a little bit easier and let me know that you can hear me loud and clear, Houston, that would be much appreciated. In the meantime, I would like to say hello to Morocco, one of my favorite places on the planet. And Tina Karan, I'm not sure if I'm saying this properly. I hope that you had a wonderful day today in Malaysia. And hello to Antonia as well. Hope that you are all doing well. Right, now today's webinar is entitled Unlocking the Magic of Learning and Harnessing the Story Garden series and the Power of Storytelling in our young learner classrooms around the world. Now, before we get started, I am going to ask you to think about your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10. Think about it. How are you feeling right now? 1, if you've had a long, tiring day at work and you feel absolutely knackered. And 10, if you're ready to start and are feeling very excited. Now, I'm going to ask you to take note of this number. Write it on a little paper or on your smartphone in the notes section, if that's what you have near you. And we're going to come back to this number at the end of the session. So we're going to see if the number has gone up or if the number has gone down. So feel free to try to type in the question box your number. I would say that I'm about a 9 right now. I'm really excited to see you, but I have been teaching all day, if you know what I mean. So let's see those numbers come on the screen for me. Now, while you are doing that, I'm just going to start and share with you the objectives for today's session. So 45 minutes, we don't have an awful amount of time, but we have enough time to discuss 3 different topics. We're going to start off by discussing effective strategies that we can use and we know of that will help our students learn foreign languages. Then I'm going to invite you to divide your brain into 2, and could you please divide half of your brain and pretend you are a student, and so experience the activities as our students would experience them. But you know what they say, once a teacher, forever a teacher. So could the other half of your brain be the teacher in you? And could you constantly think about, how would I be able to do this activity with my students? Would I be able to do it in exactly the same way, or would I have to make a tweak or 2 for you? Right? So please do feel free to type in the chat box and share all your comments and your thoughts throughout the whole session. Then we're going to end off by reaching the climax of the session and enjoying a lovely story with a little twist, if you know what I mean. Right, now I'm a teacher, and you know us teachers, we like to ask questions. So my first question today is, can you think back to all the languages that you learned and think about how we learn language, right? Now, I'm sure that you will agree with me that when you were a baby, your mother did not call you and teach you your native language in a formal way. In other words, your mother or your father or your carer never said, today is the day that you are 6 months. So it is perfect for learning the present simple. And this is how we do the present simple. Instead, you learned how to speak your native language really by listening and by imitating the models that you heard. So today I would like to share two language acquisition theories with you. Now, a lot of research has been done in the field of second language acquisition, and today we'll only be looking at two of the main theories which are pertinent for today's objective. Now, the first thing that I'd like us to think about is what Stephen Krashen said way back in the 80s when he was asked how we acquire language. And notice he's speaking about how we acquire language and not how we learn language. And this is particularly important because, as you know, young learners don't have abstract thinking skills. So language for them is quite confusing and they're not able to map it out and compare it with their native language, as, for example, teenagers or us adults are. And Krashen said that, in his opinion, we learned a foreign language, or we learn a foreign language, much the same way as we learn our native language. In other words, we need to be exposed to language, but that language needs to be comprehensible. And what Krashen meant by this is that it needs to be like Goldilocks' porridge, right? Now, you remember Goldilocks, who went into the bear's house. And when she ate Papa Bear's porridge, it was too hot. So if language is too difficult, we're not able to understand it. Mama Bear's porridge was too cold. In other words, if it's too easy, we don't progress beyond the level that we're at. But if language is like Baby Bear's porridge, then it will be at the temperature that is just right. And so the secret to getting our young learners to learn language is organizing our lessons around language that constitutes comprehensible input, if that makes sense for you. In other words, the level needs to be just right. Now, feel free to type in your chat box if you agree with Krashen and if you've noticed this in your sessions. Now, this is all good and well, but the problem is that we only teach English as a foreign language perhaps twice or 3 times a week. And so the students don't get enough language exposure as they would in their native language. And so this leads me to our second language learning acquisition theory. And this time we're going to go a little bit back in time and we're going to speak about Skinner and behaviorism. And what Skinner said was that, well, young learners do not have the abstract thinking skills to be able to think about language abstractly. And so the way around this is for us to drill a habit in them until they drill this to the point of language becoming automatic. So if I say hi to my students, they automatically say, how are you? And I will say, fine, thank you. And guess what they'll answer? And that's right, and you. And so they don't necessarily understand that how is a question word. And we have inversion in this sentence because it's a question, but they've drilled the language pattern to the point that they can just reproduce it. And in many cases, sometimes they think that how are you is just one thing, rather than a sentence made out of different bits of language. I wonder if you've seen that in your classrooms like I have. Now, what does this mean? Well, this means that we're going to have to expose our students to as much language as we can, and we're also going to have to make sure that they drill it. Now, the problem with children is that they get bored very, very easily, if you know what I mean. We also need to bear in mind that children learn language in a very scaffolded way. And that way starts with words. Now think back to when you were a child, or if you have a small child in the family. When you were born, you didn't just begin off by saying, hi, Mum, how are you? So pleased to meet your acquaintance. But it took you a good few months before you could say things like Mama, Papa, and things like that. And you started off by learning words. gradually you were able to put these words into sentences, probably short sentences in the beginning. And only at about the age of 3 were you able to have decent conversations in the form of a text, which normal people could understand, and not just your relatives who were used to hearing what you had to say. So if this is true for L1, then as Krashen alerts us, it's going to be true for L2. In other words, it's not realistic for me to teach children words and expect them to be able to have sentences. I'm going to have to start off by practicing language in terms of words, then moving into sentences, and finally teaching the children how to speak and construct texts of their own. Right now, how on earth am I going to do this? So we're going to have to ask another question, which is, well, what do our students like doing? Do they love working from textbooks? Do they love doing reading comprehension questions? Or do they like playing? Well, this leads me to another question, which is, well, children have one job in this life and only one job. I wonder if you can help me decide what it is. Is it their job to work? Or perhaps might their job be something a little bit more enjoyable? Oh, I see you're nodding there. That's right. Kids have one job, and that job basically is to play, right? This is what they have to do. And so if their job is to play, then perhaps we need to teach them in a way that allows them to do just that. Now, I'd like to share the activities that my students like doing, and if they're the same as your students, then feel free to type in the chat box. So what do my kids like doing in Portugal? Let me show you. Well, anything that is related to learning by playing. So they love acting, and they love singing and doing chants and dancing and getting rid of all that energy in their bodies. Games, oh, they absolutely adore playing games in all different shapes and sizes. And you know what? They don't mind playing bingo again and again and again. In other words, they also like routines. They also like creating arts and crafts activities. In other words, learning English in a different way, in a way that allows them to make something that they can then play with or go home and share with their families and show their families what wonderful, lovely, shiny stars they are that are able to speak in English. Now, if this is true, then we need to think about how we are going to get them to acquire language by going through these activities. And I think it is undeniable that everybody loves a good story. If you don't quite agree or you're having second thoughts, think about the teacher's room on a Monday morning where everybody comes together after the weekend. And as there's a lot of noise in the teacher's room, announce, oh, you'll never guess what happened to me this weekend. This is such an interesting story. Oh, you know what's going to happen, don't you? The world literally stops and people start lending an ear so they can hear about the juicy details of your story. In other words, there is something about stories that sticks in our minds long after we've heard them. And many of us can't remember what we had for dinner 2 days ago, but we can remember the story of Little Red Riding Hood that we haven't learned for a long, long time, or haven't even heard for a long, long time. So then we might move on to asking, Well, what are the reasons for us to bring storytelling into the second language learning process? And I've just put up my favorite reasons on the screen. And basically, the first reason that I would defend is that it provides us with a natural learning context that is child-friendly. In other words, they enjoy finding out about what's going to happen to the character, and they're able to pick up chunks of language in the story. So naturally, it leads them to develop different language learning skills because they are listening to the story. Sometimes they might be reading to the story. We might get them singing a song that's related to the story. And we might also get them acting the story out. So they're developing their skills in a way that is interconnected and is always related to a context rather than a specific page in the student's book. Now, stories develop so much more than language skills. They allow us to develop students' literacy skills, and many of our young learners are still learning how to read in their mother language. So the foreign language can be a useful help in this regard. And we're also able to speak about so many things as the result of a story. So we're able to speak about different cultures perhaps, or we're able to develop our critical thinking and our creative thinking skills. And so stories really are like an orange that we can squeeze and get a lot of juice out of. Now, my favorite reason for using stories in the classroom is that when I tell stories, kids literally, oh, hang on, what's going to happen to every word I say? And it's wonderful to see their eyes shining and to see them participate in the story with the limited language that they have. And I know that you've experienced this in your classes as well. So basically, stories are a fantastic tool that we can use to complement the student's book or the course book. Now, the question is, how are we going to implement stories in our classroom? And we're going to go back to Krashen, who reminded us that the kind of vocabulary we bring into the classroom needs to be comprehensible input. So what this might mean is that before we can actually start telling the story, we need a little bit of a timeout, and we need to teach the core vocabulary in the classroom. Now, at this point, I'd like to ask you whether you trust me to be your teacher today. In other words, are you willing to pretend to be my students? Can you give me a thumbs up or type yes in the chat box if you are, so I know that we are ready to continue? Or perhaps just shake your head because I can see that too. Right, thank you so much for trusting me, right? And so if you trust me to be your teacher today, remember to keep your brain divided in two. On the one part, you are just enjoying the story, but on the other hand, you're thinking about your students. Would you be able to do this activity in exactly the same way or not? Now, we know that before we start dealing with stories and before we start teaching vocabulary, we need to take a step back and we need to activate that vocabulary. And one of the ways that I love doing this is by using a KWL chart, which you can see on the screen. So a KWL chart is basically just 3 columns, so a regular table. And in the first column, the students would write what they already know about that topic. And this is important because we don't learn from nothing, but learning becomes meaningful when we're able to relate new learning to something that we learned some time ago. So investing 2 or 3 or 5 or even 10 minutes in your lesson doing this for students could actually be very, very good to help them boost language learning and transform it or transfer it from their short-term memory to their long-term memory, because they can relate it to something that they already know. Now, the teacher brain in you has already seen that my objective today is to learn colors. So I would ask the students to type in the first column what colors they already know in English. And we would see what comes up. Now, this is fantastic because it also allows me to then see how much I need to go back to previous learning or how I can speed up learning because they already know these basic colors. Now, the yellow column is of particular interest. Coursebook writers might write the most popular words that students are expected to learn. So you know those words that appear on the 500 most popular word lists in the English language. But perhaps my students already know pink and they don't want to know pink, but they want to know how you describe this kind of pink. In other words, that bright, almost fluorescent pink that we call fuchsia. And perhaps if I introduce this into my lesson, it will make learning more meaningful for them and it will empower them to be able to speak about their favorite color, if that makes sense for you. Now, when we start off with the KWL chart, we only fill in these first two columns. In other words, what we already know to activate previous learning and what we want to know, right? So that I, as a teacher, can tweak my lesson to meet the needs of my students. This green column is left blank until the end of the lesson or the end of the unit if I'm doing this in a unit. And students will only go back to this and fill in this column at the end with what they've actually learned. Now, this is very empowering because it's going to allow them to make sense of their learning, right? Now, once we've done this and once I know what the students already know, then I'm ready to start working on the new language. And I want to work on it in a meaningful context, if you remember. In other words, something that the students will remember long after the lesson is finished. Now, this is very, very easy to do in the Story Garden series because, as you can see, each unit opens up with a very colorful spread that is based around a story that the kids already know in their native language. So I can see you nodding, right? You all know the story of Little Red Riding Hood, whose grandma was feeling very, very sick and whose mother asked her to take a basket of yummy food to the grandmother. Now, what I'm going to do is use this double spread to teach the students comprehensible input, but using the finger technique. Oh, I can see you wondering what that is. Well, let me show you now that you've agreed to be my students. Right, so who's this little girl? Have a look at this little girl. What color is she wearing? Yes, that's right, red. Do you know her name? Listen, listen. Little Red Riding Hood. Listen, listen. Little Red Riding Hood. Listen, little, listen, listen. Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm taking language which is abstract and using my fingers to make it concrete for the students. And there's so many other expressions that I could use. Oh, who can you see here? Hiding behind the tree. Yes, that's right. Big bad wolf. Listen, listen. Big bad wolf. Listen. Big bad wolf. I wonder if you can remember. What's this? That's right. Big bad wolf. That's it. Oh, look at this cute little animal. What's this? Listen, listen. Little baby squirrel. Little baby squirrel. Yes, that's right. Little, let's join the two together. Baby squirrel. Little baby squirrel. Little baby squirrel. And here you can get the children repeating and chanting using their own fingers and showing each other. And if you want, you can even have a time out where they act out to their partner and say it out loud. Now, there's lots of language that you could use here. You could also count the flowers and say, what's this? Yes, that's right. Listen, listen. 2 pretty flowers. 2 pretty flowers. Listen, listen. 2 pretty flowers. So what I'm really doing is working on adjectives, and I'm introducing different adjectives in different word order in a context that the students can just follow. So this is a lovely way to start activating and preparing vocabulary that we will then need in the story. Other expressions I might want to use would be something like, I love grandma. I love grandma. But notice that I'm always keeping the same pattern. 1, 2, 3. Little Red Riding Hood. Big scary wolf. Baby brown squirrel. Whatever it is, keep the pattern the same so that students start feeling comfortable with it. Now, once we've done this, then we are ready to start working. And you know what they say, practice makes perfect. But you also know that young learners get bored very, very quickly. So we need to give them practice in a slightly different way. Or to use the words that Stephen Krashen uses, we need to give them exposure to language in a way that meets their preferred learning styles, right? To use Howard Gardner's terms. Now, this is very, very easy with the Story Gardens series because we have some fantastic videos that complement this double spread and that bring learning to life. So what I'd like you to do is to show me your magic pointy finger. Show me your finger. That's right. Can you wiggle it? Look at my wiggly finger. Right now, I'd like you to use your magic finger to point to the object that you hear on the screen. What do I want you to do again? That's right. Use your magic finger to point to the objects on the screen. Are you ready? Here goes.
Unit 1. Hello, Little Red Riding Hood. Page 5, Activity 1. Listen and say.
Black,
Black,
white,
white,
yellow,
yellow,
green,
green, and the children will be pointing.
orange,
Orange,
pink,
pink,
purple,
purple,
brown,
brown. Don't forget to point.
red,
Red,
blue.
blue. Right, so what are we doing? We're giving them exposure to language with a native speaker that will help them develop their pronunciation skills. Now, this is a simple, safe activity, which is going to make sure that students learn how to pronounce the word before they see it in writing. And this is absolutely essential because if they don't learn how to pronounce it first, they're going to make those typical pronunciation mistakes. Now, once they can do this, then we can move on and cater for their learning styles. And so the next activity will be building on from this activity, but now we're going to cater for our more auditory learners and do exercise 1 in the course book. Now have a look at this exercise. This exercise is a slightly different repeating, listen and repeat exercise. In other words, there's a twist. I don't want the children to tell me the color, but I want them to look at the color and associate it to previous learning, which is numbers, which we've already learned, and then tell me what number that is. So I'd like you, please, to pretend that you are my student, and if you want to type in the answer in the chat box, please feel free. If you prefer to just say it on your own, that's fine too. But remember, I'm watching from this side of the screen. Remember, listen, look at the different colors and say the numbers or type the number in the question box. Are you ready? Let's go then.
Unit 1. Hello, Little Red Riding Hood. Page 5, Activity 1. Listen and say the number.
Oh dear, sorry.
Unit
this
1.
Without meaning to.
Hello, Little Red Riding Hood. Page 5, Activity 1. Listen and say the number.
Black.
And now the children would say 1,
White.
2,
Yellow.
3,
Green.
4,
Orange.
5, and I think you get the hang of this. Now, as students repeat this enough times, and we can transform this into a game, when you feel that they are already comfortable with this activity, in other words, when even the weaker students are able to get it right so that you can catch them at being good, as Carol Reed recommends, then a lovely little twist is to promote them to your colleagues. So they become little teachers and you become their student. And now I would ask the children to tell me a color and I would tell them the number. And once we're comfortable with that, then perhaps they could tell me a number and I would tell them the color and then reverse again. In other words, we're keeping the children on their toes because we keep on tweaking the activity slightly to be able to make sure that they're getting exposure, but that they're also doing that drilling that Skinner recommended. And so this is essential if we are to make sure that the vocabulary that they then encounter in the story is not going to be difficult for them. Because if it is, you know what they're going to say. Teacher, teacher, what's that? Right? Or they will start speaking in their native language, which we all know how difficult that can be to get them out of that habit. Right, now we might also want to take this a step further and get the children playing with this vocabulary a little bit more. In other words, in a freer context. And one of the activities that I absolutely love doing to this day, and I've been doing for 30 years now, is playing the fly squatter game. Even these new kids who love these techie tools go mad when they see my fly squatters and get ready to squat. Now, today you won't be able to squat your computer screen because you might just break it. So I'm going to ask you to take your magic finger and to touch the flashcard on the board. Now, this is very easy for me to do because these flashcards already come with the teacher's pack in the Story Gardens series. So I don't need to be investing a lot of my time over the weekend working for school. If you know what I mean, right? I can just dip into the teacher's resources and take them with me on Monday into the classroom. And so the way I do this is that I start chanting first in order. So we might say red, yellow, blue, and green. Red, yellow, blue, and green. And as we're chanting, one student is going up onto the board until we've chanted the whole series. So red, yellow, blue, green, orange, black, brown, pink, and purple. If you can bring in a rhythm into this, the children hear the rhythm, which activates the language. Now, once they know the rhythm, then I can start saying words which they have to squat. So I might say red and then brown and then green and then imagine orange. And in the beginning, as a teacher, I will say this. But you know what we have to do? We need to keep the class involved. So after a while, I would say something like, oh, I feel so tired today. Would you mind helping? And now I'm going to get the class to shout out a word, which I repeat, and the child playing with the fly swatter has to repeat that word. In that way, the children who are seated are actually practicing the pronunciation and controlled speaking skills, while the child or children at the board, if I want to transform this into a competition, having 2 or 3 children play at the same time, are playing the game. And once I see that everybody knows this, okay, then I'm going to turn a card over and ask them, oh, what color's missing or what color's hiding? Yes, that's right. It's yellow. Let me see if you are paying attention. What about this one? What color is hiding? Yes, that's right. It's girl's favorite color, pink. And one last one if you wanted to do another one. Now, if you think that this activity will get your children too excited because they all want to play and hit the board, then perhaps you could try an arts and crafts TPR activity in the lab books for levels 1 to 5. Now, these books are absolutely fantastic because they have very simple activities like the spinner that you can see on the screen. And when we put the attaché with the little pointers, then the kids can spin, and whichever color the arrow lands on, then they have to repeat the word. Notice that there's a lot of scaffolding here to make sure that they're able to do this, so that even our weaker students will be able to participate in the activity and feel motivated. Now, this is all very, very easy to use because it's all ready for us. We don't have to spend hours and hours making materials, if you know what I mean. My husband keeps on telling me that I have 1,000,001 worksheets and I'm always trying to find or make another one, right? Now, once we get children excited with a stirrer, we need a settler so we can calm them down and so that the teachers next door don't come knocking on the door asking what all that noise is, if you know what I mean, right? So a perfect activity for this would be a writing activity that naturally requires the students to calm down. And this is very easy to do because in the teacher's book that accompanies each course book, we already have a fantastic group of worksheets that are ready for us to choose one and photocopy. I particularly like this one because it does 2 things. Firstly, it gets the children to recognize and see if they've understood the word. Then they can practice their fine motor skills by tracing on top of these letters, which is really important if you're teaching in a context where the alphabet isn't the Latin alphabet. And finally, it also allows them to be kids and simply to color in the flower, which they enjoy doing. And this in downtime. So I'm able to calm the students down before I move on to the next activity. Now, time is flying by when you're having fun with your colleagues. And so we'll move on to the second secret today. And the second secret is, well, remember to empower the students and teach them English that they can actually use in the real world. In other words, not necessarily textbook English, but English that real people will use. Now, there is a fantastic page in the Story Garden series, which I absolutely adore using with my students to develop their 21st century skills, right? And to help them become active citizens. So I'm speaking about the values page. And if you have a look at this, then you'll see that we have 2 situations in which we're teaching children how to stay safe when they meet adults and when they meet strangers. Now, 2 possibilities can happen. One, when somebody knocks on the door, you always have to answer. You have to answer or say, "Who is it?" Listen, listen. Who is it? Who is it? Listen, listen. Who is it? Now, you can start off just by drilling the "who is it?" As students become more accustomed to the finger technique, join 2, who is it? And as you feel that they can become more fluent, join all 3 and have running speech. Who is it? Right? And this is why sometimes they think that who is it is just one word. Right, now this will allow them to see that when it's a stranger, we have to be polite, but say bye-bye and go and be safe. But when somebody knocks on the door and we already know who they are, then we're going to say, hello, grandma. And if you want to take this a step further, then you can use another resource later on in the unit, which is the arts and crafts activity to make the wolf mask so that we have a scary wolf. Now, remember to empower your students and to allow them to choose which of the 2 situations they want to role play. We all like to feel like we're in control of what's happening to us. So rather than telling them, first you have to do this one and then you have to role play the other one, let them choose. And between all the groups in the class, you'll be able to do both. Now, this activity is absolutely essential because it is going to prepare students for the language that they are going to encounter in the story, right? And this is important if we are to make sure that they will have comprehensible input and be able to follow. So, without further ado, I'm going to say, glory, glory, it's time for a story. Glory, glory, it's time for a story. Glory, glory, it's time for a story. And remember, I can drill and see what the students can or can't remember. What's this? That's right, glory. How about this one? That's right, story. And I can continue doing this until the students know. Notice that I'm always playing with the rhythm. Glory, glory, it's time for a story. And the reason why I'm doing this is that the rhythm and intonation in English is different to the students L1. And I want them to replicate this rhythm. Now, once they know this, then it's time for them to do the story. And today you've been working so hard that I'm going to allow you to just sit back and listen to the story. But can you please say hello with your magic finger and point to the part of the story that you are listening to? What do I want you to do? And that's right. Use your magic finger and point to the frame of the story, the part of the story that you are hearing. Are you ready? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, then let's get to it. Ready? Remember, listen and point. That's
Page 10, Activity 10.
Hello, children. It's me, Mr. Green. Listen to the story.
Mr. Green. Hello, Mr. Green.
Watch out for the wolf.
Magic fingers.
Bye-bye, Mum. Bye-bye, Little Red Riding Hood.
And there's my magic finger on the screen.
Watch out. The big bad wolf is in the wood. A red flower.
So as you can see, we're recycling the language that we presented
Two
before.
pink flowers. Three blue flowers. Oh!
Hello, Little Red Riding Hood.
What's your name?
My name's Mr. Wolf.
The big bad wolf.
The big bad wolf?
Yes, I'm the big bad wolf.
Oh dear.
Brrr. Ouch!
So there's a little twist. Bye bye, says Little Red Riding Hood. Now the question is, would your students be able to understand the story? And I think that you'll agree with me that at this point they would, for two reasons. The first reason being that Little Red Riding Hood is a classic story which they've probably heard in their L1, so they already know the content. But notice that the story in the story garden always has a little twist to engage the children and pull them into the activity. And then we've also guaranteed what Stephen Krashen is warning us about. We've guaranteed that the language in the story is comprehensible input through all the activities that we've done before. And so the children are able to follow and enjoy. Now, remember what Gardner told us. We need different learning styles. So we can also get the children to watch a video of the same story. And again, you can get them to point to the parts that they are hearing as they're sitting down. I'm going to let you just watch a little bit of it so you can see how nice and easy it is to follow and how the English is slow to make sure that the children are getting exposure to English with a native speaker, but a native speaker that isn't racing. In other words, they can understand what they're saying. Have a look and see how the animated video works.
Bye-bye, Mum. Bye-bye, Little Red Riding Hood. Watch out! The big bad wolf is in the wood. A red flower. 2 pink flowers. 3 blue flowers. Oh!
Hello, Little Red Riding Hood.
What's your name?
My name's Mr. Wolf.
Right, and you get the idea there. So slowly and scaffolded, using the different learning styles to make sure that the students have exposure to English in many different ways. Now, a lovely follow-up activity that you can do is get the children, once they've heard and seen the story, to close their eyes, hear again, but imagine. And so in this way, you're getting them to activate their different senses and to personalize the story, because they can imagine a little different, you know, they can imagine Little Red Riding Hood being a little different to what they saw in the book. And so this is a great way to start tapping into the students' creativity. And at the end, you can have a time out where in the native language you speak about what changes did they make? Did they see the same flowers? Did Little Red Riding Hood look the same? Was her hair the same color? All right. So this is a nice way that you can use to get the children to personalize the story and make the story their own without making it more difficult in terms of language. Now, after this, you can go the extra mile and get the children to act out and role play the story. In other words, to be little actors and little actresses. And I love this kind of activity for those special days when parents come and visit us at school. In the case of Portugal, they always come at the beginning of the year for Christmas, Mother's Day, Father's Day, and then the end of the year celebration. And instead of planning different things, what I do is use the different stories that we've been doing throughout the year and create a little mini theatre production for them. Parents go ballistic as they get out their mobile phones and film their children speaking in English on the stage to then share with relatives. So it's a nice way to celebrate all the things that we've been doing in class and to involve parents and help them understand what we've been doing. And speaking about involving parents, another thing I love doing is actually extending the exposure and inviting parents to bring storytelling into their homes. Now, the Ellie Young Learner series of readers is absolutely fantastic for this because, as you know, they've been graded according to the Common European Framework, and we've got stories that are very, very learner friendly and that have been recorded. And for me, this is essential because some of the parents of the kids that I teach, let's just say, can't speak English. And so if they had to read the story, they'd make many mistakes. But if there's an audio that accompanies the story, they can listen and point to the word that they are hearing. And so what they really are doing is learning English, but they're also working on their children's literacy skills. Now, the cherry on top of the cake here is that there are worksheets that parents can download for their kids, fun things that the kids can then use to extend that and to practice the vocabulary in the story. And there are also worksheets for us teachers if we want to then look at the story in class. So all this has been prepared for you, and all you need to do is to choose the resources that make the best sense for your students, because nobody knows them as well as you do. Right, now it's 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, sorry. In other words, time has flown by, which means that it's time for me to say, glory, glory. This is the end of today's story. So I want to thank you very much for being online today and for having participated so well. It was wonderful to see you from the comfort of your home. I hope that you've been able to get a good idea or two. And I would like to invite you to follow Ellie Publishing online, because they've prepared so many wonderful treats for us. If you'd like to find them on their sites, then this is the contact, or send them an email. Remember to follow Facebook. Remember that every week there is a webinar with an invited guest, and that these webinars have been recorded so you can watch them on YouTube under the name of Ellie Multimedia. Please remember to register for webinars in advance to make sure that you get your certificate on time, and also to make sure that you are accepted. And so I would like to end off today by thanking Sylvia and Ellie for the invitation and the privilege to have spent an hour with my teacher friends all over the world. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope that you've enjoyed our time together as much as I have. Now, I'm going to ask Sylvia if she can help me see if there are any questions. So, Sylvia, I wonder if you can share comments in the chat box with us at this point. And if you have a question, please do feel free to type it in the question box. You still have time, all right?
Yes, indeed. So first thing, if you like, Vanessa, you can stop sharing your screen so that the teachers can actually see you full screen. Then, yes, so I'll invite teachers to write down any comments and questions they might have. I've got already a first question. We haven't got much time left, I'm afraid, but I think we got enough time to answer a couple of questions. Vanessa, is it better to read or to tell a story? What works best in the young learner classrooms?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I want to say thank you to the teacher who sent it to us. It's a question that I've had to think about for myself as well, because Sylvia, quite honestly, I think that there are advantages to reading and there are advantages to telling, right? Mm-hmm. So when we read the story, and we read the story in the course book, then we can read it in the same way on different days, right? And this is important because when you tell the story, it's very difficult to tell it in the same way. And then kids start saying, no, 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 that's not what you said. That's not the way the story goes. And so you guarantee that they hear the story in the same way with no grammar or spelling or language mistakes, right? Not all of us are native speakers, so it's natural that we might make a mistake or two. Having said this, I do think that telling a story has a certain magic to it because I can stop the story, I can ask you questions about the story, I can personalize the story, I can adapt the story to the students. But yes, it does mean preparing a little more than simply reading the story. Now, I always tell kids, why choose chocolate cake when you can have chocolate cake and pudding? In other words, why not read a bit of the story and then tell a bit of the story and then watch the video? And in that case, you get the best of all worlds. So I'm not sure that there is a best way of teaching, but I do think that there is the way that makes the most sense for your students on that particular day. If you've had a difficult week, then just read it. If you have time to prepare, then perhaps tell it. And remember, kids love videos. They love anything that's technological. So round it off with watching a video would be my answer, if that makes sense to you.
Thank you. Just let me, okay. Okay, another question. Vanessa, is it better to use a story that children already know or a new story, in your opinion?
I think that really depends on the children, right? And it depends on their language level, and it depends on how comfortable they feel with English and how much exposure they have. Because if it's a story, there are two things that you're asking the child to do: understand the story and pick up the English, right? The advantage of using a story like Little Red Riding Hood with a twist is that the children already know the context of the story. So they understand the base of the English, which means that they're not focused on understanding, and so they can concentrate their energies on getting new language and learning new language in the context that they're already familiar with. So I think that to begin with, using these classic stories or fairy tales or the fables that kids already know in L1 has definite advantages. Now, of course, I'd be lying if I told you that kids don't like a new story that they don't know. But again, I think that perhaps we can mix, and we could have one story that they already know, and then perhaps a reader with a new story that they haven't heard yet, and then mix and match and gradually wean the children off stories that are already within their cultural knowledge, right? Do we have time for one question?
Okay, one last question. Okay. This is very interesting. It's a little bit beyond, I would say, the course book and the session, but I think it's really interesting. How do you get parents on board to invest in readers for their kids?
Oh, good Lord, that's the question, isn't it? Well, at the beginning of the year, I always have a meeting with the form teacher, because in Portugal, the English teacher isn't the form teacher. So I just go in and teach the kids twice a week, but they have a form teacher. And at the beginning of the year, she has a meeting with the parents where she explains what she's going to do and what the rules are. And I always ask them for 15, 20 minutes. And so I explain to parents how it is that I'm going to teach their children, because these new ways of teaching are not the same as the way that parents learned English way back in the 70s or 80s or even 90s. And so I want them to understand that this playing with language isn't really playing, but it's learning in a way that relates to kids. And I also explain to them the benefits of reading. Now, Sylvia, I'm doing my PhD, as you know, which means that I've been doing a hell of a lot of research. And one of the things that I was really interested in is, what characteristic or what quality do intelligent, so-called intelligent or achieving students have in common? And I was very interested to find out that there's only one characteristic that all good students have around the world. And it is not the fact that they live in a structured family, or that they go to a good school, or even that they have a good teacher, much as that makes me feel a little sad. But the only thing that they all have in common is the fact that they read, right? So that is pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. And if that is the secret for success, then I think that we need to invest in giving our children these kind of opportunities. So I usually explain and take various early young readers to class, and I show them to parents so they can flip through them and see. And I explain what the different parts are and how they can use them. And then I ask them to not go to McDonald's once, just once. And instead of going to McDonald's to buy a reader, now I get each parent to only buy one reader, and then to share these readers with the class. So by buying one reader, their children, I teach 30 kids, so their children have access to 30 different readers. And then I make a little passport book, and each time they read a reader, then they have to draw something in the reader, and then I give them a stamp. And once they get 10 visa stamps on their passport, then they get a treat, right? Now, I said before, as we were having the webinar, I really like the Ellie reading series for the reason that there's a good audio there. And people in Portugal speak good English, yes, on average, but some don't. Some speak really bad English. And we all know that if the children learn a mistake, it's going to take them 8 times longer to unlearn that mistake than it will be to learn new language. So the audios for me make all the difference, right? Coupled with the worksheets for the students. So I show parents, how can you teach your child English? Well, you can listen to the audio and have parents bonding time. And then while you are cooking dinner and you want to entertain them, print out the worksheet and do the word search or do the crossword, or they're all fun activities. So they aren't exactly work. And you know, Sylvia, parents, when we explain why we want them to do what we want them to do, I find that they come on board. And at the end of the year, I ask them if they will donate the book. And yes, some say no, but some say yes. And so I keep the books, you know, from one year to the next. And I've been building a really big resource library. But my golden rule is that kids can choose the book they want to read. I never tell them which one. And if they start reading and they don't enjoy it, then they are perfectly fine to put the book back and go and choose another one, because we have enough readers. Now, I have bought plastic bags where they transport the books in, right? So that the books don't get donkey ears, if you know what I mean. We have some lovely IKEA plastic bags that are zip-it bags, and the plastic is thicker, and the LED fits perfectly in them. So they transport them in the bag in case it rains, right? You know how sometimes it rains and then the readers get destroyed, or put them in their bags and then they return them. And this has started a habit of reading. And now I've made a big poster this year where we aim to get to 7,500 words in a term. And so what this means is that reader corresponds to X words. And if we get there, then we'll have a treat, which the parents and I will organize. But I don't know if you heard the parents. So we're going to have a big party on Children's Day in June if they're able to complete all this. And so that's how I'm able to convince parents, not by forcing them, but by explaining, and especially by involving them, right? My rule is that they don't pay us teachers a lot of money, so we never do what children and parents can do for us, right? And in this way, my children read. And what I found is that the more they read, the better their writing is, right? So
indeed, yes.
things. They know more vocabulary, they're able to
Yes.
write better, and they're able to do better in the Cambridge exams as well. These wonderful readers have Cambridge-like exercises at the end for the kids to do. So really, it's a win-win situation, right? But that's my secret. Perhaps our teachers out there could try as well, right?
Thank you. Excellent answer. Thank you so much. We got many other questions, honestly, but we ran out of time. What we can do is, dear teachers, should you wish an answer from Vanessa, do send an email to marketing@ailonline.com. This is a mail you should read in the confirmation email, and you will be receiving tomorrow's email with a certificate, etc. I will be happy to collate all of these and ask Vanessa to kindly answer them. Yeah, I can see many, but as I said, we really are, short of time now. And I'm very pleased with this session. I'm very pleased with such a big audience. And thank you indeed, Vanessa, for this very interesting and involving webinar. I do believe that the key word is actually involvement, to involve. Either you are teaching, either you are actually presenting, and I was very much involved. And I'm sure, I know also by looking at all the comments our teachers have been so far as well. So thank you. Would just like to remind about next week's webinar, and I'll see you soon then.
Okay, so a big thank you to everybody, and a bye-bye. Stay safe, and please do keep in touch. It's always great to hear from you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Bye-bye all.